Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with another rewind edition of my podcast, and today I will be rewinding 2 Chainz' rapper Go to the League. Now, this is my favorite 2 Chainz album, and I believe it's his most meaningful, his most intricate in one album as well, just because of the subject matter. And there's a lot of different subject matter that he talked about on this album, whether it was be the NCAA and how they was taking advantage of players. Now, this was back in 2019, so this was before the NIL. So he explored it, like talking about the NCAA, just talking about decisions that kids need to make for their families and for their parents, just overall, just trying to spread a positive message. He had more of a Nas type aim on this album. It was more positive, and instead of the street stuff that he usually talks about. Now, this album was executive produced by LeBron James. Excellent job of production on this album as well, especially the EP that he did on this album. I'm surprised he hasn't done more executive producing on rap albums, but I know he executive produced one of the NBA 2Ks as well. But excellent EPing on this album. Um, but I love the title of this album as well, Rapper Go to the League. So you ask why that is significant. So it's significant because from just the stigma of the inner city blacks or inner city youth always being told, your only two options to be successful are to rap or go to the league, which is not necessarily true. And it's not true because, there are a lot of other successful black people that just don't rap or go, to the NBA or NFL or the MLB or whatever. We have doctors, lawyers, um, you know, you're successful in your own right, what you want to be. And it shouldn't be attached to a dollar amount, or it shouldn't be attached to a stigma. It should be attached to what makes you happy and what gets you up for work in the morning. Now, if you get up for work in the morning, excited about what you do, optimistic about what you're doing, then that's your definition of success. You know, and 2 Chainz was definitely um, trying to convey that message with this album, just saying you don't have to just do those two options. You can do anything: doctor, lawyer, nurse, uh, preacher. You can do anything. A store owner, small business owner. Just do whatever makes you happy. You don't have to, strive to those two things, because those two things are very difficult to get into. Education is more accessible than those things that you're trying to do, as far as rapping and going to the league. But 2 Chainz has a unique perspective from this. Being a basketball player in high school and in college, he played at Alabama State, um, and he's a current rapper now. So he has a unique perspective of rapping, being a rapper. But he didn't go to the league. But he was on of some kind of trajectory to get there. But he did rap a lot, and been around a lot of athletes and stuff like that. So he's seen both sides of the coin. So that's what makes this album unique, or gives him a unique perspective to talk about these issues. Now, I talked about before, this album was before NIL. This album was in 2019. NIL started in 2021. But in the song NCAA, he said, "Let me get this straight. If I drop 40 today, you don't care if I eat. You don't care if I ate." So a lot of stories are coming out of former players that talked about how they were dominating on TV and doing all these great things for the university, but when they got back to campus or back to their dorm rooms, they had to figure out how they were going to eat, because back then they weren't getting paid. You got stipends and stuff like that, but that only lasted, it took you so far, especially when you're traveling all the time, going places and things like that. So these players were making all these money, but making all these plays and things, but they were getting exploited. And I know people want to say, well, they were getting scholarships and free education. Well, any Joe Smo with a 3.0 or 4.0 can get that. These players were making 3.0s and, making money, generating revenue for the schools, not just because they were playing good, but they were generating revenue, keeping the doors open at these colleges, keeping, keeping the sponsors, or keeping those boosters happy to keep donating to the school. They were keeping the lights on. So it was only right that they get a small piece of the pie, which they're getting now. But just to help them get through college. Now, some of these players, couldn't get jobs because their programs were so rigorous they couldn't get even a part-time job working 20 hours a week just to make money in addition to what they were doing on the court or the field. So very powerful words with context, of course, from 2 Chainz on this song, the NCAA song. Very good song. If you haven't heard it, definitely check it out. But it's very powerful just talking about it because players were getting penalized for receiving compensation, whether it was, allegedly Reggie Bush or Cam Newton. These players were Heisman winners and did great things for their programs and put their programs in a better light. And Cam Newton put that Auburn program on the map. They haven't been that dominant since then. So it was only right that he got some kind of compensation, especially what they're contributing to the universities and to us, just the general public, is from an entertainment standpoint. Um, but 2 Chainz also talked about, children living too fast on this album and how they need to slow down. And the song Forgiven, which is my favorite song on the album, and happens to be an intro, one of the best intros, I think, in hip hop history. That's especially underrated. Nobody really talks about, with the beautiful vocals from Marsha Ambrosius. He says that I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're doing something to make your parents have to bury you, you might have to slow down. Um, Now he said this in 2019. It's very relevant today. He could have said it, he could have said that in the biblical times. It'll still been relevant today. It'll always be relevant. Always good sound advice. Um, you don't have to live too fast. You have your whole life ahead of you. So don't try to live faster than you need to, because your time will come. And then when you get to that point to have to live like an adult, you don't want to do it, because if most people will tell you, if I can go back to childhood, I would go back. Didn't have to deal with bills. You didn't have to deal with the stress of it all. But it's very good sound advice from 2 Chainz on this album, especially on that song. Um, I'm Not Crazy, Life is another great track. It's a song that had features from Kodak Black and Chance the Rapper. Definitely hear that song if you haven't heard it yet. But 2 Chainz had a good line. He said, "Stayed in the streets like it's room and board. They knew me for it, but that's beside the point. Like a shooting guard, I'm moving forward." Excellent wordplay. Uh, that's in the pocket of 2 Chainz and what he does. Gave us some of that street lyrics and some of those metaphors that we usually like to, in addition to that conscious message that he spread on this album. Uh, Threat to Society, another great song. It was played on commercials on ESPN, I believe, for NBA and NCAA basketball games. Very great song. Um, he talked about his love for sports and his coach, Coach Gwen. He said, "I probably learned more from Coach Gwen than I did my own kin." Just showed the amount of time that he put in basketball and advice that he saw from his coach and the respect that he had from his coach and what he meant to him. Even on the intro, he was being announced coming out for his high school team, and they had coached by Coach Gwen on there as well. So he showed his respect for Coach Gwen on this album. But 2 Chainz always had a love for basketball. He's always in the front row of the Hawks games or Lakers games. He's at a lot of basketball games courtside, usually dapping up the players or hugging up the players. He has a mutual respect with the players, and they have a mutual respect back for him as a rapper and what he does, especially with Shaquille O'Neal as well. But this is the best album. I think that Jay-Z feature would have been appropriate for the 2 Chainz album. 2 Chainz always openly has talked about wanting to have a feature from 2 Chainz. From 2 Chainz always talk openly about wanting to have a feature with Jay-Z. And I think this would have been the best album for the conscious album. Jay-Z would have got a great message off in the midst of this album. But this is one of my favorite albums from 2 Chainz. I believe it is my favorite album from 2 Chainz, just to be honest, because it was just his most meaningful and intricate album. So if you haven't heard the album, definitely check it out. Very great listen. And as always, until next time, I'll see you next time.